I'd like to take you back to 1981, 82, when I first saw the Rubik's Cube. So that's what this is going to be about tonight. It's interesting with the puzzle. I was not able to solve the puzzle. I attempted to, but there was this incredible book by a 14-year-old boy from the Bronx, Jeffrey Rosenthal, that wrote this amazing book. And the way that he wrote this book as a 14-year-old boy was unbelievable. He now runs a restaurant in Atlanta, Georgia. So he did a PhD, ended up getting into the restaurant business. And if you're ever in Atlanta, Georgia, you must go visit him. Anyway, back in the 80s, I ran some Rubik's Cube contests at my school. I didn't know how to run these contests. There wasn't a model that I could look at, but we did the best we could to organize this. But anyway, the Ideal Toy Company ended up finding out about the contest that I was running. And they invited me to come and work with them because they were setting up contests across Canada. And so, I helped them with a number of things, but I had the joy of spending a week with Professor Rubik. So he came to Toronto, took him around the city, did a number of things with him. This is a younger me doing the trick. I was taking Professor Rubik's cigarette and vanishing it. I wish I could show you the trick, but we're not allowed to smoke here. I used to do this in the smoking area at my high school. So I would go around and I would take cigarettes from the students. And I can't do the trick, but I'll show you how the trick worked. So you'd take a cigarette, you'd put it into a student's scarf or whatever, and then it would just vanish. And the cigarette was just gone. And then I'd just walk away. I wish I could show you the trick, but I can't. Anyway, that work with the Ideal Toy Company led to some television commercials that I was involved in. The one for Base-Cell margarine was incredibly complicated. There were all of these twists and turns in it, and there was a series of things that happened. And one of my students was the hand model. They went all over North America trying to find a hand model, and they couldn't find anyone. But anyway, during the shoot, my student, Kelly Moffat, had her hands in a harness, dropped the cube. And it fell on the floor, and we had no idea where it was at. And that cube, I couldn't take it apart, special photographic paper, so I took it home with me and tried to figure out how to unscramble it. And there was this beautiful book called The Handbook of Cubic Math by David Singh. And I learned how to do certain things in the cube that you would never do. I learned that the centers twist. And you wouldn't see that because they're the same color. But this book is amazing. This should be in all of your libraries. There is so much mathematics in this. But one of the cool things is that when you take a cube, and if you turn it, so if you do a move on the cube, like you take the top and turn it 4 times, it comes back. But that's true with all sorts of examples, on the cube. And it's the same with magic. You can take a deck of cards, and if you do a perfect shuffle 52 times, the deck of cards will come back. I'm actually very interested these days in mathematical magic. So I was doing some professional magic when I got into teaching, but now I'm really interested in mathematical tricks where it's algebra that's involved, or geometry or things like that. This idea of looping around where the cube comes back, or a deck of cards comes back, there's a lot of examples that you could use with your students like this. Happy numbers. So if you take a number, a positive integer, and square the digits and add them together and do it again and again and again, you'll either get a 1 or a 4. And if you get a 4, it loops around. And there's lots of things like this. This is the sequence. So you take a starting number and you just take the number of even digits and odd digits and it comes back. If you're teaching functions, if you do inverse functions, if you ask students, here's a cube, I moved it, how do I get it back? You can unscramble it by starting at the end and working back. And you can do the same thing with inverse functions. And then reverse things that way. Much better than using that X and Y method that nobody understands. And finding the number of combinations of the cube, that's something that students can do in high school as well. I mentioned 3 people here, Jeffrey Verrazano, David Singh, and Professor Rubik. Back in April 2018, I had the absolute pleasure of moderating a panel with these 3 people. They had such an influence on me. And I want to invite all of you to put on your calendar to go to one of these conferences. Where I met the three of them again was at the gathering for Gardner Conference. It's held every 2 years. It's been canceled because of COVID, but it's slated for April of next year. And it's a lovely event. It's all about recreational math and puzzles and games and origami. Beautiful conference. There is a link that you can use to get this PowerPoint and some other things. The QR code is right in the middle of the face of the cube. Thanks very much.
That was great.